So, the sign. As far as we know in Limbus Company, it is a magical thing some people have. If you have it, you can see it on other people, at least sometimes, depending on sort of your level of mastery and whatever. But, it is generally very mysterious, and we only have confirmed, a confirmed power for one sign, and it seems to be unique for everyone, at least to some degree. Obviously, Sinclair can essentially summon his future self onto himself. And there might be more time manipulation sort of things with that, but we have no actual clue. That is purely speculation. So, really, not a whole lot. We know confirmed that Sinclair has it. We know it's very likely that Dante has it. I would be very surprised if they didn't. And then, obviously, every member of Demian's group and Sonya. And those are all of our confirmed sinners. We know that Sonya said several sinners have signs. Technically, that could just mean Sinclair and Dante, but I highly doubt it. But it does mean, at the very least, I think, 4 or so. I doubt it's the majority of the sinners, but I do think it is, you know, several beyond just Dante and Sinclair. Yes, I did see Dante's notes on the sign. There might be something from it I'm forgetting, but I think I've generally got the idea, and they speculate about, you know, Demian might be being able to use, like, Mong in a sort of projected way. That might be part of his, and Sanson's might be his, sort of theatrical abilities. That's certainly something. But we do have a little information that Demian talks about. Is it Demian or... I don't know. But they refer to things like Sovereigns of the Star, which seems to maybe be their group name, technically. He refers to things like... I think this is Sonya, actually, that says, like, the sign is related to those who are destined to lead, or something like that, which aligns with some of the stuff I'm going to talk about in a bit, relating its more literary origin. We know Rodion doesn't have it. Do we know that Faust doesn't? I suppose she says that it is hard to observe something that they can't see, which, you know, kind of suggests that she's in the can't see camp and therefore, you know, doesn't have it. Technically, I don't think the sign is always visible even to those who do have it. I think the more you awaken to it, the more easily you can see it. But I also still think that regardless, Faust doesn't have it for other reasons. Is the sign something you get ever since you were born, or can someone just manifest it? So... this kind of ties into its more literary and historical origins. In the origins of it, it is, I think, something you are born with. Though, it's weird. It's sort of that, you know, determinism sort of thing, but I think the original intent of it is it does mark you as someone of a lineage, with this sort of symbolism in history, if that makes sense. So I think it's something you're born with, but it's, how do I say this? It's something you're born with only if you are destined to develop it. Like, your future is set out, your future is determined early on, and you are given it based on what you will do. It is not necessarily what you will do based on if you're given it, if that makes sense. Could entirely be wrong. This is just my interpretation. And so, I think that covers everything we know in Limbus Company. I'm not entirely sure if there's anything else. It's, you know, a lot of esoteric bullshit and vague stuff. Foreshadowing. But there are a couple of details, like the fact that they relate to sort of leadership. But what we can really use to consider who has the sign and how it's going to come into play in the story, that is found in the original literary work. Because the sign is not just some, well, it's you know, very fantasized version of the Mark of Cain, which is a very big plot point in Demian. In Demian, Demian himself talks to Sinclair about the Mark of Cain, a biblical mark that sort of distinguishes, they say, like, I don't know if it's direct descendants of Cain, or rather just people who carry on his legacy regardless of bloodline. But it is essentially the mark that was given to Cain after he killed his brother, you know, from the original story of Cain and Abel. Demian, however, has a very different interpretation of the original story. He doesn't believe that the actual Bible story is literal, but rather more of a metaphor. He says that there was a sort of Cain, and that he did kill someone, maybe his brother, maybe not, but that he was not marked because the act was evil, and that in fact he might have been justified, but rather he was marked because people were afraid of him, because people were afraid of his strength, and that he was above other men, and that maybe he should be allowed to, you know, kill people who he deems should be killed. That he should exert his influence into the world and not be ashamed that he is smarter and more capable. And to be clear, this is my interpretation from reading it once. So I have not like dug deep into the literary origins of this. I did like a quick scan through of the Wikipedia page on the Mark of Cain itself, and the Cainite sort of religious sect, whatever you want to call it, that may or may not actually exist. Probably not. Yeah, it's sort of a prejudice, but basically the idea that there are some people who are just, who just see the world differently and have a different relation with violence and leadership, and are destined for great things compared to the normal man, and that people are afraid of them because of it. And so Demian says that he has the sign, and that Sinclair has the sign, though it's never like a literal mark. In fact, they bring up the idea that it was never a literal physical mark, but rather just a social mark, a taboo of sorts. Yeah, Rodian's ideology from Crime and Punishment. From what I understand, yes, it is very similar to that, and so that's why it's very fitting and ironic that Rodian does not actually have the sign, and is our only confirmed member to do so. As Demian and Sinclair get closer, Demian is very much a weird kid. Even when he was very young, he is ready to kill a motherfucker. The original Cromer, who is not, you know, a mass murderer, but rather just a sort of schoolyard bully, Demian basically tells Sinclair, if you want that guy dead, I can kill him. And these guys are like 13 at the oldest, I believe. So, Demian, while he may look very passive and in his Limbus appearance, there is definitely something very violent hiding beneath if he is anything like his book counterpart. But we do sort of, we can use this sort of interpretation of the Mark of Cain, which, by the way, from my understanding, is based around the sort of Canaanite religion, which is a... How do I explain this? It is a historical thing that Christians in the olden days were afraid of. Sort of a story about a cult that worshipped, you know, Cain from the Bible and had very similar ideas to what was described before. But that group probably did not exist, at least not in the way that it was described and got around in, the old Christian circles. So it was essentially a boogeyman cult that people were afraid of back in the day. What we can do is we can use this original historical context, as well as how it's described in Demian, to approximate what Kim Ji-hoon is going for in who has the sign. So, what do we know about the sign? One, it is explicitly confirmed to be about leadership. People who have the sign are destined to be good leaders, whether it be directly through, leading a group of soldiers, which, honestly, I think every sinner in Limbus Company will have to do in Purgatorio, but that's for another discussion. But also, it might just refer to leaving a strong influence on the world as a whole. Just exerting yourself and being unafraid to sort of leave your impact, which is very similar to ego, and we can get into the exact distinctions between them at another time. But I also think that a propensity towards violence is also an important thing for the sign, and a willingness to kill while also not being like a violent mass murderer. And that sort of comes from from Damian's interpretation of the Mark of Cain is, someone who killed, maybe he had a good reason, maybe he didn't, and was branded for it. And so, Mark of Cain should go to people who have a strong willingness to commit violence to achieve their goals, but not necessarily do violence for violence sake. The final idea is, I forget who says this, whether it was Demian or Sonia, but people who have the mark see the world in a very different way. They see the truth of the world, I think is something along the lines of what he said. So it should be someone who has a very unique view of the world. So those three things: a unique perspective on the world, a propensity towards violence without being too crazy about it, and the ability to lead, or at the very least, provide such a shining example that people will follow regardless. So, who among the sinners could have that? I am going to go down the list. We have 12 sinners to get through, essentially 11 because we know, or 10 because we know one of them has it, one of them doesn't have it. Let's start with our little boy, Yi-sang. Yi-sang does have sort of a unique perspective on the world, being someone who is, one, extremely intelligent, and two, regularly peers across the mirror and understands the functions of the branching worlds. However, he is not much of a leader. I do think he will get character development in this regard to some degree, but he is still ultimately a follower. He is not someone who wants to really exert themselves on the world, but rather someone who more so wants to appreciate what they have in the world, the friends and stuff he's made. And he wants to write poetry and make inventions, and will leave a mark, but I do not think as that sort of leadership. And also, violence. He has a very poor relation with violence. He is not himself good at it, and is only really learning through the bullshit that the LCD is able to pull through identities and leveling tickets and stuff like that. And yeah, Yi-sang probably does not have the sign. And in a very similar sense, Faust. There was some discussion earlier about whether Faust is confirmed to not have it or not. I'm going to disregard that, though my conclusion is not going to be much different. Because much like he's saying, Faust is smart, does have a different outlook on the world, but she is very much not a leader. She is basically the definition of a follower, as she is following the Gesellschaft and its rules to the, well, not to the letter. She's clearly struggling with keeping up with what they want and all that, but she is not that kind of leader that I would expect to have the sign, nor does she have the violence aspect covered at all. So, our science lads, no. Don Quixote. I think she has a good chance compared to the others we've gone through so far. She has the violence aspect covered, being a blood fiend who, you know, has to kill people to survive. Even if she does not necessarily want to, she has that aspect down pat. She sees the world. She doesn't have, like, a super crazy, like, view of the world, but she does have the lens of both, you know, the experienced and practical Sancho persona that she had as she was when she was younger, and now the newer Don Quixote persona that she has cultivated herself and essentially chooses to see the world through kinder eyes, even if she knows that that's not necessarily how it is. And that is a very interesting philosophy, and gives her a lot of wisdom that can be related to the sign. So she's got the violence, and she's got the wisdom. What she does kind of lack is the leadership, as while she has had, like, a sort of leadership role being, sort of, you know, Papa Don's second in command, she is not someone who really wants to take care of people directly, if that makes sense. She's all for heroism and stuff, but she does not have the desire to stick around and be bound by someone she is obligated to take care of. However, as we have seen in, you know, the LCB checkup, she has that overwhelming need to essentially spread the family out. If she does not do that, she cannot access her blood fiend powers safely. The hunger will consume her at some point if she does not have kindred. And so despite the fact that she does not want it, she is going to be forced into that position at some point. Particularly probably when the war starts. And so, while she does not have it yet, I believe she will be essentially fantastic leader and essentially mother, regardless of if she, you know, necessarily wants it or not. It is an unfortunate thing that she is going to have to deal with, and so that has her having all three counts. I'm still not fully sold on if she does actually have it, but she is a very good contender to have it. And as Zach is pointing out, she does have a star in her center logo. And the sovereigns of a star are, you know, the sign-related faction. So, same with the other sinners who have a corresponding sovereign of a star. Wait, is that the case? Do all the others have a star in their logo? I'm gonna have to check that out, actually. Thank you for that, Zach. That could very much change my opinion on some things, but oh well. Hopefully I'll come to the same conclusion just logicking it out. But yeah, very strong contender. As to what her sign could possibly do, it is hard to tell. Sinclair's is obviously related to growth, with, like, you know, bringing in a version of him that has grown. So if Don Quixote is to get one, I mean, it would be, you know, charging forth, or maybe having a dream, but how would that translate to an actual ability? That is hard to tell, but it would likely be maybe some sort of support ability, maybe the ability to like bring imagination to life and allow everyone around her to be the hero they see themselves as. Maybe. Who knows? Those could be some interesting ideas for an ability. Ishmael to Rim, Dawn to Sanson, Merceau to the Sun. Interesting. I'm not entirely sold on Ishmael being Rim's counterpart, but at the very least, he does appear in the Kanto, so there is a justification to be made for it, so interesting. And then, yeah, so we've gone through Dawn, so next would be Ryoshu. Alright, Ryoshu does have that sort of wisdom aspect that we talked about, specifically in her relation to time. You know, she has all the whole stuff with the Sangria and all that too, but I think her time relationship is a bit more important. Particularly from my interpretation, I think that if she does have a sign power that is related to it, whether it's a direct result, one is a direct result of the other, or if they simply appear that way because it is sort of fitting for them to interact, if they're two separate powers, who knows. But I think that the time aspect is very important. And then violence, obviously, she has a propensity towards violence, but has enough restraint to not go all out. That is very important. She uses violence in her everyday life, and does enjoy it to a degree, but does not do so senselessly. She, you know, has that ability to hold back. So that is, you know, 2 counts for her. And then leadership. Leadership was a bit of an odd one before the latest Kanto. You could definitely tie it to like her motherhood and her being able to take care of children. That could definitely count as leadership stuff. But now we have a bit of a more direct idea of leadership and what she could lead with her artistic movement. She has made it clear that she intends to create an artistic movement, and a movement does not involve one person. She would have to take in students. She would have to take in others to follow in her ideals, and also follow them up with their own interpretations. And so that would be what she is leading. If she, like I said, if she does have a sign, it is likely related in some way to her time perception powers, and potentially time manipulation. We have also seen, like, Araya herself is... Araya herself is very blue, and definitely lines up with Demian's group. She does not have, like, a direct connection yet, but it is definitely possible in the future. So... in some way, her time manipulation powers are probably related to a sign. It is not, like, you know, I wouldn't stake my life on it, but it's definitely a strong possibility. And I think that's all I want to talk about for Ryoshu. Obviously, her sign ability would, as I've said, be related to her time abilities, whether it be purely perception or be able to take more active effect in it, who knows. Ryoshu's sign would replicate the index beeper. Interesting, you're gonna have to elaborate on that, because I don't see exactly how that would work, or tie into her own story, beyond, you know, the obvious connection with the nurse father, but I'm willing to hear you out. So, that brings us to Merceau. So, Merceau. He obviously has a degree of violence. He, you know, killed someone, might have been his mother in this world based on the trailer stuff for him. But at the very least, he is well known for killing a guy because the sun was in his eyes. And that, I believe, to some degree, fits with the Mark of Cain. It's a bit more random violence than I would like for the idea, but obviously he sort of has his own perception of things and view on the world, which both ties into his justification as to why he did it, and also serves as, you know, more of a degree of connection to the sign. He very much has his own, like, absurdism takes on the world, and sort of how it treats people, how people treat the world, how people treat each other, stuff like that. And the idea of leadership is the only problem I have with Merceau having the sign, but that can be sort of reinterpreted as someone who is essentially paving the way for others, not by intent, but rather by existing as himself to such a crazy and revolutionary degree that it inspires others just by his very presence. And it is because of that that I think he is a strong contender for the sign. He likely, if he does have the sign, would be someone who would probably challenge Damian's ideas of what it means to have the sign. That he is not someone who wants to exert his will on others, but rather wants to exert his will on himself and do things as he is to do, and if anyone tries to stop him and get in the way, only then does he sort of try and exert that influence. So his sign would probably be more of a defensive sort of thing. Like something to grant maybe immunity to the effects of certain crazy effects, like mind control, or resisting other people's sign abilities, stuff like that. Something that allows him to stay unambiguously himself and be unyielding to anyone else. We will see more of that in Merceau's Canto. Maybe he'll just get straight up a sign awakening moment there. Maybe it'll be hinted at, or maybe it will just fly under the radar and we'll look back in another couple of years and realize, hey, wait, there was foreshadowing here. Anyway. Yeah, that's my opinions on Merceau. Which brings us to Hong Lu. Hong Lu, when it comes to his perception of the world, he is sort of still developing his perception, but he very much is set up to be someone who is very wise and has his own thoughts on action versus inaction. I mean, we had that whole Jiachu segment of, you know, what is your answer, Hong Lu? And he is very much set up as someone who is still developing his opinions and his beliefs, but very much is set to be a very wise character as it continues. And so, violence. He is definitely not someone who likes violence, but he is also not someone to shy away from it. I mean, we saw how experienced he is in duels. We, you know, get a lot of, you know, him talking about how often he trained and what his family put him through. So he is very much desensitized to violence, and while it is not his preferred method, he is absolutely willing to throw hands. And finally, leadership. While he is someone who has, you know, rejected the idea of, you know, leading Hong Yuan on his own, he is someone who is also sort of set up to be quite impactful to Hong Yuan as a whole. Not only with his sister trusting him and being in the highest position in the wing, but also just generally... How do I say? His Lord Liu also gives a lot of credence to his leadership abilities, even if that is a mirror world version of him. I think there's a little bit to be learned from that. But yeah, so that's about half the sinners, though actually a bit more, since we have two of them confirmed. But Ishmael. No, wait, it's Heathcliff first. Heathcliff. Yeah. Dark Door kind of, honestly, in some ways, says it himself. Heathcliff is just Heathcliff, he just has the power of Wild Hunt, and that's it. Very potentially. However, I do want to give him a fair shot. So, violence. Definitely. Right now he has, well, not necessarily right now, but in his past he definitely had a bit too much propensity towards violence. He went way in the other direction. But nowadays he is, you know, still quick to throw hands, but a bit more on the reasonable side, and willing to do so more for just causes. And then a view of the world. He is simplistic in a way that is very effective. He doesn't overcomplicate things, he gets right to the core of the matter. He is by no means dumb, he just, you know, keeps things simple. And that very much could count as, the sort of sign, seeing things as they are sort of thing, but could very well also go against it depending on how Kim Ji-hoon interprets it. So, and then, we finally have leadership, and Heathcliff is set to be a very notable leader, as sort of the leader of the Wild Hunt, potentially called the Earl King, though it's not entirely clear whether those two terms are, like, completely connected, or just happen to line up, for that exact instance, but whatever the case, he is set to command an army of the dead at some point. So, we very much know he is meant to be a leader, whether he knows it or not. But, at the same time, Wild Hunt is very much its own thing, that is connected to the rivers. We don't know how connected they are overall. They might very much be, you know, maybe the sign and the rivers are very connected in every aspect, and it is, you know, one and the same. Or maybe they're completely different, and they have no relation to each other. It is hard to tell. But regardless, Heathcliff very much has his own abilities going for him. I do not see necessarily a storytelling need of making it the sign as well, but I am not also opposed to it, so I give him a 50-50. He very much could have it. You think the power of the Wild Hunt is a sign ability, or the ring is a relic with the ability? I've heard the ring theory. I don't fully buy it. I think it's not impossible, but the river clearly is sort of the main thing connecting the Wild Hunt to Heathcliff. I think that's pretty clear. The river down there under the manor is very much related to death, and so for it to, you know, give him an ability to raise the dead makes sense. That could be through a relic. As we know, Levitain was found in a flaming river, so could be that the ring is, you know, the origin of that river, or at least the associated relic. So it is absolutely not impossible, but I don't think it necessarily needs to be connected in that regard, if that makes sense. But Ishmael. We've had a little bit of talks about Ishmael, especially with her not really having much of a story arc past her Kanto. I have, you know, opinions on where that might lead in the future, but a sign is definitely an interesting idea. And we do have a good bit of evidence. Violence. She is a whale hunter. She absolutely can throw down with anyone who she wishes. She very much goes on a violent streak in her Kanto. And in terms of leadership, she is often positioned as the sort of secondary leader of the sinners, despite the fact that they don't really want it. want to listen to her when the topic of second in command comes up. Ishmael's one of the main contenders, even above Otis. She is someone sort of shown to help people figure themselves out after she sort of learned her things, and also she is, you know, very much the kind of person to make sure everyone's prepared before a big mission, stuff like that. Her way of seeing things, her wisdom aspect of it, that is sort of the weakest link. She is very much discovering herself, and she did go through the whole my compass is curiosity development back in her Kanto. But it's still, I am not fully convinced that she has that sort of wisdom. Maybe she's developing it as things go on, but she still very much seems materialistic, not in that she's like greedy for even necessarily money, but just for like status and stuff like that. She is very much cared about her position within Limbus Company, her ability to, you know, get better jobs in the future, her resume, and that very much does not seem like a sort of wisdom that is required for the sign. But she's still developing. She could come to have some other, more complex desire in the future. Obviously, she does value, like, her own freedom and ability to make decisions and stuff. So there is a bit there. It's just unclear exactly to what degree is required for the sign, if it's even required at all. This is all still speculation, of course, but in any case, we get to Rodion, and we know she does not have a sign, which, as we sort of talked about earlier, is very ironic, given her character in the original book and his sort of philosophy of, you know, the strong shall conquer and stuff like that. She very much is someone you would think would have the sign, because she is generally portrayed as being very competent, with a strong ability to commit violence, while not being a particularly violent person in her day-to-day life, only in specific scenarios when she thinks some motherfucker has to go down. She might actually be a good leader. I feel like she is sort of set up to potentially take a position of leadership. She often is shown in her identities to be very good at that sort of thing. But what seems to be her main stopping point is her philosophy sort of aspect, her understanding, her wisdom, which is not great. She very much is, you know, the hothead we know, who is very concerned about how others perceive her, and her perceiving herself as being, you know, she wants to be a hero, almost like Don Quixote, but she's not really willing to consider others, which is, you know, a very big part of being a hero. And so that's kind of what's the word I'm looking for? But disqualifying her from having a sign. So, a lot of interesting stuff there. Boom. Okay. Going to chat. Rodion is probably the most unspecial sinner, and that's how she's special. Yeah. She is very much going to be our normal person character in Limbus going forward. And that's how we're going to sort of, when the war starts, connect to all of the normal people. And that's how I think she's going to be important. Oh, you want to believe everyone except Rhodia can manifest Mark? Because that's funny. It is, yes. After Rodion is Dante. Dante pretty clearly has the sign, even if it's not technically confirmed. Because obviously they can see it. Now it might technically be more of an ability of their clock and their other abilities that just lets them see it even without having it. but they probably have it. They fit all the criteria, including propensity for violence, because old Dante was very aggressive and mean, and had no trouble killing motherfuckers. And even this Dante has no trouble ordering the deaths of his enemy, or their enemies at this point, so. And then Sinclair. Not much to say there. Most of what we know of the sign is from Sinclair, so there's not much to elaborate on. His sign is related to his growth. He has growth-related abilities. Growth is his whole theme. Bada bing, bada boom. He is still very much developing the stuff that will sort of retroactively justify his sign. His propensity towards violence, he can obviously be very violent in some of his IDs and in some of his moments interacting with people like Cromer. So, as for his unique outlook, we haven't gotten much of that, but there's a lot in the original Demian book we can talk about. I want to, at some point, maybe do more of a deep dive on the Demian book specifically, but I do want to mention at least the organ player who Sinclair meets, who I think will be an important character in Limbus, and how they talk about their ideals, their sort of religion, and their beliefs about the sign and all that. So, that I feel is a separate discussion topic. But, it is worth at least mentioning quickly. And then, after that, is Otis. Otis is interesting. Violence and leadership are both very much her thing. I don't think I need to elaborate on that. She is a military commander, she is Odysseus. That is very much her thing. However, I don't know about the idea of her having a unique outlook or wisdom or perception of the world. We have not seen much from her in that regard, though she does keep her actual true thoughts close to her chest, so what she actually thinks about things may be very different from what she shows. But I feel like she is generally a lot more... She's too practically minded, too focused on what's right in front of her, and the, tactics of the war. How are we going to survive? How are we going to defeat the enemy? That she doesn't really have the introspection to look within and sort of figure out the greater ways of the world. Too practically minded. I could be proven entirely wrong. I also have not read the Odyssey yet. I've been meaning to get around to it. But I think she does not have the sign. But I am open to the idea that I am wrong in that regard. And Gregor very much does not like violence, even if he committed a lot of it during the war. Very much opposed to fighting, especially in regards to his bug arm. He just does it because he has to. He is not much of a leader, even if he is technically the Roach Emperor. It is not a position that he in any way wants, and is very much trying to avoid. And he does not essentially consider it him. And, he also does not have much of a unique outlook on life beyond a lot of self-pity. So I very much do not think he has the sign. I don't think that requires much explanation. He very much does not fit any of the criteria. I'm open to anyone who wants to prove me wrong, but I think it's going to be a tough convincing. So.